In this video, we'll be voting on the submissions to my September 2019 Warframe Synergistic Loadout Competition, FrameWork Battle Royale. If you haven't seen that, or you don't know what I'm talking about, it's linked below, but you may also enjoy this video as just a big pile of awesome build ideas. After reading all 52 submissions, I decided that about a fourth of them, 14, made the cut to become semifinalists, and you'll hear those in a few minutes. I'm pleased to say that almost all of the cuts were just due to strong competition. Almost none of the submissions were simply not applicable to the contest, and where there were problems, you all were very reasonable with me. Thank you for that. It was a lot to manage, but I could not have asked for a better community to do this with. So a few notes here, and then I'll tell you which loadouts made the cut, and let you vote. But I'm also going to do a short honorable mention segment at the end of this video to tell you about some ideas from entries that didn't get in, but which were still really interesting or had a lot of potential. There were quite a few repeats, some of them repeats of very good ideas, but by far the most common reason that I accepted one submission over another was what I'll call the elevator pitch test. Most of the submissions were very high quality in every other way. They were sustainable, they didn't ask too much of the player that isn't justified. If something was hard to get, the loadout made it worth it. If there was a Riven or something, there was a good reason for having a Riven. It wasn't just a bunch of power. They mostly weren't people showing off. All the other requests were perfectly fulfilled, and all the loadouts had synergy. So since almost all of them did follow all of the rules and do the thing that was asked, I then asked myself if the loadout had interesting and unique synergies that most of us haven't seen before. A lot of entries definitely included synergy, but showed strategies that are commonplace and already widely used. I also asked myself if the loadout sounded like fun. The large majority of submissions were full of synergies, but only more basic synergies. If you chose a frame that can boost reload speed, for example, of course you want to be using some weapons that take advantage of that, but that's only the ground level of synergy, just something you would always do when playing that frame or using that weapon. It gets me in the door, but not into the elevator. That is the reason that I rejected almost every submission that I rejected, so if you're wondering why you didn't pass this first round, that's probably why. Given what I've just described, this is what I decided to do and how you're going to vote. For each submission I accepted, I wrote an elevator pitch version of that submission, so like an abridged version, using as much of the submission itself as possible, and you're going to hear all of those elevator pitches in just a minute and vote on them. Which ones would you want to see as full videos? Which ones are interesting enough that you want to see more? You aren't limited to just one vote. You should vote for any of them that you think sound interesting. Think of it more like giving them a point. So yes, you can vote for your own and only your own if you entered and you got into the semifinals, but for everyone else, vote for everything that sounds interesting to you. You'll vote right here in the comments. Just type "Behold" in all caps, and then name as many loadouts as you want to cast a vote for. Or none of them if you don't want to vote for any of them, or one of them if you only like one of them, but you can cast as many votes as you like. If you like all of them except for one, you can give all of them except for one a vote. I've also listed the names and timestamped them all in the description for you for reference. Quite a few people requested that they be kept anonymous, so you'll notice that I've given them all a name if they didn't already have one. A lot of them did, so you can easily know which is which for voting. Please do listen to all of the elevator pitches if you're going to vote so that everyone gets as fair a chance as possible. That's also why you get as many votes as you want, so that people don't just vote for the first loadout they like. That way all the entries have a chance to get a vote from potentially any voter. Remember, this is becoming video content, so you're also voting for what my content will be the week after this one. The framework elevator pitches with the most votes will advance to the finals. I'll recreate those finalists' loadouts as full public videos right here on my channel, and then you all will get to vote on those full videos in a similar way that you're going to vote on these elevator pitches in a moment. Stay tuned for more details on that later, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Just to be clear, I'm purposefully leaving out specific builds, because this stage is about the concept behind the loadouts. Again, that's really the thing that differentiates them. Otherwise, they were all quite even. They were all quite high-quality submissions. The biggest thing that differentiates them is which ideas are going to be the most exciting to people. So this is kind of still a screening, but we're figuring out which ideas you all want to hear more about. It's up to you to decide which of these ideas will survive. So you tell me in the comments which ones get you excited. Vote for everything you like. Let's get started. First up, we have Motus Garuda. This revolves around using Garuda's first and fourth abilities for their strange air stalling mechanics. While you're holding her first or fourth ability down, Garuda can hover in midair and benefits from a variety of mods like Aviator and of course the namesake Motus set, which makes you immune to knockdowns while in midair. The Corinth Airburst alternate fire works very well with Garuda's Seeking Talons, which is built for 100% slash chance here, so that when combined with the Airburst built for viral, you get very spicy area of effect damage, with even higher status chance than usual due to Motus setup, which is basically always active due to this playstyle. One of the problems with the Corinth is that it has pretty slow reload speed, and the solution is, of course, Amalgam Ripka's True Steel, baby! Yeah, that gives shotgun reload speed and bonus score chance, I suppose. And the Ripkas work oddly well with Garuda's Dread Mirror. So Dread Mirror is an execute, you insta-kill if the target has low health. So if an enemy survives a targeted attack, they fall over, and you can kill them with the epic ground finisher damage from the Ripkas. This build even brings along the Piranha Prime to kill nullifiers and synergize well with Garuda's forced slash procs, since the only weakness of the very high damage output Piranha Prime is its horrible status output and therefore inability to deal with armor. This loadout uses Garuda's weird physics to hover in midair and then takes advantage of being airborne using those abilities. Next up is Healing Waves, support Hydroid. Along with Trinity and Oberon, Hydroid has powerful support tools with his Curative Undertow and Tidal Impunity augments, and notably Hydroid gets a lot of tankiness himself when supporting allies this way, even more than, say, Oberon. You get full immunity while in Undertow, and then Tidal Impunity will give you status immunity for a long time. And the best part is that Hydroid also has incredible zone control. Trinity doesn't have in the much way of offensive knockdown stuff, and Oberon does have some zone control with his Grasp, but Hydroid has a lot of crowd control in his kit. So anyway, the two augments, Curative Undertow is useful for healing a variety of things, and Tidal Impunity gives you very long status immunity that you can give to allies too. And again, you also get a lot of movement and a lot of defense while you're using those two things. Hydroid is also excellent at zone control, as I mentioned, but since all of his abilities are very splashy, the Heart Pack provides single target crowd control to yank a heavy unit away from a struggling ally, and then Exposing Harpoon boosts the damage. For maximum self-sufficiency, this loadout also brings a Catch Moon kit gun calibrated with Pax Charge for infinite ammo with no downtime, and the Sancti Magistar with Amalgam Organ Shatter is also useful as a source of energy-free backup healing. The Jinn and the Artax provide backup layers of crowd control for an overall loadout that provides a lot of quality of life. This is Death from Above Nekros. The Exceltra is really powerful, but also hilariously ammo inefficient, and Nekros solves that by making more loot. You also use a MOA with Tractor Beam to stay off the ground so you can advance quickly without running into your own explosions, the Exceltra's other weakness, and Shadows of the Dead is your ground force and one source of damage reduction. This Nekros build also features Aviators since you want to stay off the ground, as well as the usual Despoiled Equilibrium economy, and also has health conversion and Shield of Shadows for ample survivability that allows you room to be missing some of it some of the time, so you can just plow ahead, a very aggressive and mobile Nekros. I mentioned the MOA runs Tractor Beam and also Whiplash Mine to pull enemies together for Exceltra, and Link Armor on the MOA works with health conversion, while Link Health works with health orbs for maximum sharing. Finally, this loadout uses slam attacks on heavier enemies to temporarily stun them before killing them with a specialized secondary weapon. Always being in the air means you can always slam, and tougher enemies can be softened using the armor reduction from Terrify. So this is a very mobile and aggressive Nekros that still makes the loots and tanks the damage. Essentially does all the basic things Nekros can do, and puts them in a package that is a lot more interesting to play and very aggressive. Sharpshooter Slowva. By the way, this Sharpshooter epithet was in no less than 3 different submissions. Nice to see Sharpshooter getting some play. This loadout revolves around killing enemies with headshots, which is made easier by Nova slowing them down. And then those headshots feed back into your abilities to give you more slows. The build saves space by getting the strength for the slow from Pax Bolt on a kit gun, and Pax Bolt also makes casting Molecular Prime significantly cheaper since it has such a high base energy cost. You're running the full 300% duration for Nullstar as well, so you have damage reduction along with adaptation and molecular fission to automatically restore the Nullstar charges. A theme with this loadout is that it's trying to restore everything automatically, so you don't really have to do anything but keep casting Molecular Prime and getting headshots, and everything works out. The range is left really low so Nullstar particles won't fly off, so you can't use portals to move around quickly, but Molecular Prime travels outward with duration, so it's fine. Since the enemies are so slow, Vitality with Arcane Victory provides you plenty of sustain. Arcane Victory gives you % healing when you get a headshot, a bit like Arcane Grace, but it's when you get a headshot, it's when you're doing something offensive instead, so you can be proactive and kill enemies, and your health will sustain itself automatically. It also has natural talent since the frame gameplay is mostly recasting Molecular Prime. But again, snipers here. You're basically just going to hit enemies in the head with Sharpshooter, restore lots of energy, and they're really easy to hit in the head due to slows. Gaze is also a source of single target damage that is a great way to carry Pax Bolt. So you have a loadout where basically you just focus on getting headshots and killing enemies, and everything sustains itself. You get a headshot, you get some strength or some efficiency or some energy, and you get back some health regeneration, and everything works, and Null Star restores itself because of Molecular Prime, and it's a nice package, and it all self-sustains. Silent but deadly Wisp. Imagine, permanently invisible Wisp, chucking armor-stripping bombs all over the map. Since Wisp can't fire weapons without losing her invisibility passive, even if they are silenced, this uses Exodia Contagion to be able to shoot something while invisible. The problem is that Exodia Contagion is not super powerful on its own, and it especially has a lot of trouble with armor, so this loadout is fixing that. Steel Charge and Arrow Vantage are important on Wisp for more contagion damage and more airtime to throw contagion, and since Breach Surge is useful to this strategy for easy targeting and spreading radiation, it wants duration, range, and efficiency. But the main event is the Argonax Amalgam mod that gives daggers the ability to remove a flat amount of armor when they deal damage. That isn't as similar as it sounds to Shattering Impact, because it doesn't have to be impact damage, it can apply to damage over time effects. So the Argonax is abandoned as a damaging weapon, it's not very good damage anyway, and it holds utility, like Amalgam Serration and even Negative Zoom to increase your situational awareness while aim gliding. The main weapon is a Zaw Dagger. It has to be a dagger for the Argonax Amalgam mod, and you want to go for maximum status chance. Covert Lethality is actually still good since it provides flat base damage, and then if you want to kill an enemy with the dagger on the ground, it's not optimized for normal melee combat, but because of Covert Lethality, you can just get a finisher and a combo and still kill enemies. You're never going to use it that way. It's mainly built for gas. All the gas. Condition Overload is still pretty good because Wisp has a lot of ways to get status reliably, and the innate viral procs from Contagion also help. And you even use a MOA with Security Override to hack without you needing to leave the air. And the writer noted that Tractor Beam can be a little unreliable used this way, but of course it helps a lot too. In a pinch, you can even use Will-O-Wisp to provide short amounts of ground invisibility when you need them. This loadout just lets you do bad things to enemies while completely safe and stealthy in the air. One single gas proc is a total of 10 instances of damage from your dagger, 1 from the gas radial damage and 9 more from the toxin proc, for 60 flat armor removal from just one proc. That's not including the upfront damage from the contagion projectile, or more gas procs in a group, which will definitely happen. That's quite a spicy attack for something you can fire from stealth and which takes no ammo. Orb-splosion Trinity. Since Trinity's first ability increases enemy health, and effects like acid shells on the Sobek do damage based on the enemy's max health, you can explode even a very weak enemy modified with Trinity's Well of Life to destroy everything else with a glorious acid shells burst, and shower allies in health and energy orbs due to the augment for Trinity's first ability. Even armored enemies are vulnerable due to Abating Link removing armor, and you can still basically do everything else Trinity does. You can still use Blessing and Energy Vampire, of course. Using Death Cube and Sweeper Prime makes as many orbs for allies as possible. You hardly need them yourself, but the whole point is to support people in a different way, and you even bring the Tysis as a way to soften enemies that the Sobek is having trouble with, or maybe you don't have Abating Link active. It's just a really interesting way to supplement your Trinity support, and it doesn't really sacrifice anything, it just allows you to provide a giant pile of orbs and do a lot of damage. Gives Trinity a damagey option too. MechaCouch Oberon, designed to remain downed indefinitely. Between an effect of Oberon's Renewal that slows bleed out and the Undying Will mod, this actually does work. Apparently they're additive effects and you can stay downed forever as long as you keep the energy up. If you lose Renewal, it won't work. So you need to regain energy while downed. You have to use the Synoid Gamma Core or something else with a Syndicate Radial effect, and of course it's got to be a secondary because that's all you can use while downed, but it does work. Companion choice here is very important and depends on playstyle. So while you're solo, you need to pick a Sentinel with Sacrifice so that you could be revived and therefore you'll go down, and then you need to get the Sentinel killed so that you stay downed. And in a group, you can swap to a Kubro. You could pick a Sahasa for energy, and then use the mecha set to do actual things besides just shooting one enemy. That adds some gameplay to what is otherwise a surprisingly decent but really boring playstyle where you lie invincible but hardly able to move on the ground. I want to note that ammo restores and other types of pads work well downed as well, and for the rest of the loadout, you basically just want to bring a self-damage weapon to explode yourself, and then let your sentinel die if you're playing solo. And then if you play in a squad, you're going to have to convince people not to revive you. This one is called Kohma, the most elegant way to use the comb and the twin Comac effectively without rivens. You really don't have space for all of the status and multi-shot you want and a damage mod on your comb, mostly due to the just slightly too low status chance. You need too many mods to get them to 100% before additional multi-shot so that all pellets proc. So the comb and the twin Comac, while great weapons, are kind of limited in how strong they can be without rivens. Two weapons that really require rivens to push that damage ceiling, which is very uncommon. So Chroma, with his base damage buff, gives both weapons the space they need for their strongest builds. And since both combs want to be using their nano applicator or embedded catalyzer, Chroma's Vex armor recasts fit in perfectly. Carrier provides the ammo, Chroma is tanky and does lots of damage, and both combs are really powerful weapons. If you don't go this route, you either lose a lot of damage potential or need rivens to save enough build space for base damage. This is probably the most elegant way to use these very powerful weapons, and a great choice for non-Eidolon Chroma gameplay that's also not dependent on what element you choose. Banana's Ember is a zone control loadout that uses ground finishers. This is capitalizing on Ember's automatic crowd control, which is one of the draws to play Ember right now. Ember's Firequake augment for World on Fire provides automatic crowd control, most people know that, but specifically it knocks down enemies, and it's not quite consistent enough. It's pretty random. So ground finishers are different from normal finishers, and fist weapons have the highest multiplier, so the Furax can run Amalgam Furax body count, which makes it so when you do a ground finisher, the Amalgam mod knocks down all nearby enemies for double auto stuns, even while you are killing the enemies around you. And that also increases the blast radius, the Amalgam mod increases the blast radius of launcher weapons, like the Ogress, which can zone control effectively with Nightwatch Napalm, Firestorm, Multi-Shot, and Continuous Misery, and allows you to really chain crowd control without explicitly focusing on doing crowd control. Jin provides yet another form of automatic crowd control, and you guessed that the Cryatra provides yet another automatic layer of crowd control, so really maxing out passive crowd control so you could just kill everything. Plenty of people want a way to play Ember, and this is a great option. This is the Nezhative Man, a great loadout especially for arbitrations with their permadeath. The negative strength on Warding Halo turns it into a functionally different skill. So Warding Halo, when it breaks, gives you a period of invulnerability. Running negative strength on it means that even just a tiny amount of damage will make it break and give you invulnerability, which basically means that you just can't die unless you get one shot from full health. So the Ferox is used to hold enemies together, and Condition Overload and Healing Return preps them in case you need to heal. You're even using Hush on the Ferox, so that the throw doesn't alert enemies even though it affects them, for the Stealth Gasser, the Fartox. The kit gun is Gaze, its name's Solution, which I thought was kind of funny. Corrosive and Innate Radiation deactivate Ancients and kill any tanky enemies, and since Gaze chains, it has good synergy with the Ferox too if it's grouping enemies together. Then you're bringing a very high status hybrid melee to maximize healing return and condition overload. The build really relies on that to heal because, again, you're only worried about getting one-shotted. Sustained damage is not a concern, you'll just be invulnerable, so you just need to make sure your health is topped off. A Riven is actually fairly important on the melee weapon here to save space because you really need Weeping Wounds and healing return to heal up as fast as possible. You could also add Exodia Force for more heals. And there's a Naramon focus here for combo counter sustain, which matters more with a build that is equipped to fight scaled up enemies. The Sentinel is with the Jin and Cryatra, which is pretty standard for arbitrations. Jin is just immortal long term, so you get as much vacuum as possible. This build also omits Synth Fiber to make sure that health orbs actually give healing when needed, since the build is, again, very reliant. The success is totally reliant on being at full health for the moment that you're vulnerable, because you can only die by being one-shotted. So the Cryatra is a great status weapon with the Ferox, of course. Again, the main draw here is that a Nezha with fully negative strength warding Halo is essentially just invulnerable when the Halo breaks, and you just need to make sure that you do not get one-shotted, which is a very interesting, different way to focus on survivability. Resilient Vauban. One of Vauban's biggest problems is his squishiness, but because he has a lot of control over enemy positions, you can use health conversion to stay alive and generate the orbs you need with Synth Deconstruct and the Broken Scepter. A Sentinel with Deconstruct has a lot of time to shoot enemies that are tried in Vauban's abilities, and Synth Fiber allows you to always pick up health orbs even without missing health, so you can prepare that armor that you're gonna need since Vauban has so little innate defense. Using a Shade also gives you Ambush for some extra base damage. Vauban's passive gives you another damage multiplier, so that's even better. The Ferox, built for its primary fire, is great for even more control of space, and it's also its excellent single target damage dealer. It's very ammo efficient, so you can pick off enemies inside of Bastille. It's also making very good use of the Vigilante set mods on your Sentinel's weapon, which can be just the Sweeper Prime or Cryatra. You're only using it to tag enemies for more assists, for more Deconstructor health orbs. And a Gaze Kit Gun has strong cluster synergy against tight groups inside of a Vortex. So you have the Ferox to kill enemies in a Bastille, and the Gaze Kit Gun for the enemies in the Vortex with that chaining that it got. Overall, it's just a really clean and efficient way to play Vauban and control space, and not die. Sentient Ronin, Excalibur, doesn't use Exalted Blade at all, instead focused on immediate impact and being a bruiser rather than a sustained damage dealer. This is a Surging Dash build, so Excalibur is built as a bruiser with moderate strength and Hunter Adrenaline to spam Surging Dash, which gives you a lot of combo counter hits for every enemy hit by your slash dash. This also includes Arcane Avenger, so it's a large flat boost to critical chance, and that's really noticeable since it scales up with Blood Rush, and this loadout is scaling up your combo counter really fast. That's very, very noticeable. Enemy Radar is especially important to help you find large groups of enemies to dash into for combo, and then Amalgam Daikyu Target Acquired gives the Nikana percentage-based lifesteal for free, so you can just blind enemies and do a finisher for a full heal whenever you want. Due to Surging Dash rapidly increasing combo, it's really important to use Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds, and you actually get the better end of the deal on Nikanas, which have kind of low supplemental stats. It's fine, because your combo is going to be so high, Weeping Wounds and Blood Rush will skyrocket your crit in status, and you don't need to worry about it. So if you go with a Za, you can just not worry about whatever the supplemental stats are, probably go for crit. And with Nikana Prime or Dragon Nikana, again, the relatively low supplemental stats are just fine, because they'll scale up very fast. This loadout uses Naramon as well as Drifting Contact to avoid losing built-up combo and easily maintain that high melee power, but this loadout is also really resilient to something going wrong since you can build the combo up so fast. The whole thing about Surging Dash is that if you were to lose your combo, it helps you recover, so this loadout is very good either way and can scale pretty far too. This is Mama Bird Zephyr, an operator combat enabler. Since most of the Zephyr's value comes from set and forget turbulence and tornadoes, your operator can just stand in the safety radius of turbulence and attack freely. The pod scaffold discs have a glaive-like interaction with tornadoes where they hit multiple times, and then that shares the damage to the enemies in the tornado, so you can actually do surprisingly high damage. Since you aren't moving around much and you aren't shooting weapons with Zephyr very often, if you bring a Sahasa Kubro, it will always give you energy, since Sahasas dig up what you need, and you won't need anything other than energy. So you can keep turbulence and tornadoes active very easily with aggressive building and not worrying about efficiency at all. There are also a few weapons that are effective even while you're not in your frame, like the gun staffs. The Scourge's bullet attractor notably kind of helps with some amps, and of course the Zenistar is good for leaving a lingering field to control space, so you can focus on fighting with your operator. You could use any prism, it's specifically the pod scaffold that has awesome synergy with tornadoes here. Automatic anti-armor, Avalanche Frost. The main draw here is that you can get to hit 250% strength without any negatives, using only Umbrals, Power Drifter Augur Secrets, and Energy Conversion with Growing Power. Both of those are going to be activated automatically, very frequently, with the help of a Death Cube. Using a weapon that hits many enemies at once, like Sweeper Prime or Cryatra with Blast, Death Cube makes plenty of energy orbs, and you will essentially always have that maximum armor stripping Avalanche. The thing about Avalanche is that normally to get it to fully remove armor, it's normally weakened by having low duration, high energy, low range, but since it isn't here, you don't have to do any of that to get it to that full damage reduction. You can build whatever and just focus on the fact that it has really powerful full armor reduction and a large AoE stun, so you can run Pyrana Prime and just kill the armorless frozen enemies that you'll get with Avalanche. You can run some radiation procs in your loadout because Ancients will still provide damage reduction while frozen, and just overall, while encasing enemies in ice doesn't pause status effects anymore, it's still really powerful. Removing all armor like that without making Avalanche too weak in its other ways, like again its range, its duration, how much it costs, is really powerful. It just feels great to have an Avalanche that is so usable and yet still fully removes armor. Those were your 14 contestants for the FrameWork Battle Royale Finals. As long as this video doesn't say voting is closed in the title, go vote while those elevator pitches are still fresh in your mind. Pause the video, go vote. Okay, good job. I'm not going to tell you how many of these are going to get to the finals to try to limit strategic voting. In the finals, we'll be using an even better voting method called single transferable voting to decide the winner. More about that when we get there. tons of fresh new ideas for when I start FrameWork back up again, and speaking of which, some honorable mentions from the other submissions. Lamaterasu had a really cool approach to Gauss revolving around wall latching. That loadout used Mach Rush to Spider-Man between walls and then took advantage of the Proton set for a variety of glorious bonuses and damage reduction. The only reason this didn't get in is because what I just told you is the whole loadout with regard to synergy. It doesn't really have any particular Warframe weapon synergies beyond Gauss's basics, but that's not really their fault. I can't really think of many specific weapon synergies with Gauss. This is definitely one way I'll be playing Gauss, so I wanted to tell you about it. Actually, here, I've left a gameplay clip of it in the description. Go take a look. It's short but sweet. Nekon submitted something similar to that armor-removing, gas-bombing Wisp aim-gliding build, and noted the potential to use some of the Motus set to reduce the likelihood of knockdown so you don't get knocked out of the air. I thought that was pretty smart. That loadout didn't have a trick up its sleeve quite like the Amalgam Argonaut gas bomb thing, but it was still a good submission. They were similar. Arquind noted something about Garuda and the Sahasa Kubro. Garuda has a lot of reasons to run with Kubro. The mecha set is obviously amazing with Seeking Talons, and the best overall Kubro right now is definitely the Sahasa, but you shouldn't take the Sahasa Kubro when running Mecha Garuda, because you're going to make health orbs, and that will make Garuda lose her passive that gives her more damage while she's at low health. So Sahasa Kubro, not so good with Garuda. Pick a different Kubro. Mecha Garuda, great, but no Sahasa. Repeating mentioned something that wasn't part of the main build. I wish this had been, because it's a really cool idea. So Proton Snap adds flat status chance, and it works with pseudo-exalted abilities like Whipclaw. It apparently even grants Slash Dash the ability to inflict status in the first place. I'd really enjoy seeing that idea develop further. Bionic Me mentioned that the Rakta Dark Dagger's overshield restoring against irradiated enemies passive doesn't work on finishers unless you're holding the weapon already. Such a bizarre thing. In other words, you don't get overshields from a finisher with the Rakta Dark Dagger, even if the enemy has radiation, unless you've swung with the weapon normally first. Really weird, but pretty important for most cases where you'd use that. Ruben mentioned that you can use a high crit primary weapon with a Riven to boost the max critical chance of a companion with Hunter synergy, potentially by quite a lot. I was thinking that how you probably don't even want to go for a high base crit chance weapon due to disposition differences, in example, some weapons having augments that give them more critical chance. You might want to go with a weapon that has surprisingly low base critical chance to get the absolute most crit on your Doge, or on your cat. For You mentioned that you can interrupt Sentinel revives from sacrifice. I was trying to test this and I couldn't figure out how it worked. For You mentioned that you hit X to interrupt Sentinel revives. This didn't work for me, but I've rebound everything. Is that a thing? Does anybody know? Comments? Go. Araikawa mentioned that in the Naramon focus tree, there's a node called Void Hunter that allows you to see enemies through walls, and that allows you to teleport to them using the Twin Bazalk through walls. Again, not sure how actually useful that is, but very, very cool. I actually also haven't tested that one, so take it with a grain of salt. I'll be testing that on stream. And finally, Derpstorm posted their video publicly with an interesting Grenier subtitle aesthetic that I thought you might like to check out. I've also included a link to their channel in the description of this video. And also a shout out to a lot of the submissions for just being very well organized. They're interestingly stylized in their presentation. Most of the text was very clear and concise, and I only got a single video entry that was too long. It's not easy to record a video with all this information in less than 5 minutes, so well done, and thank you for being considerate to your fellow competitors. And that's just about it. Thank you for watching. Vote if you haven't yet. Thank you for participating, and we'll tabulate the results and begin the finals videos at the end of this week.